Homecoming is about to begin, and not only do we have bodies piling up and blood being spelt, but there appears to be a brand new love triangle in Shore City. So, as the dance approaches and the time comes to name the homecoming queen, there's only one question left to ask. Who survives?
What's that? You want to be scared? Come with me. You will experience tales of horror, ghosts, and death. It is not recommended for the weak at heart. Listen in the dark. It's more fun that way. This is Weekly Spooky.
Hello, my spookies. It's Wednesday, and you know what that means. It's time for a little spooky in your weekly. I'm your host and narrator Enrique Couto, and I am very excited to bring you part 4 of 5 in the Homecoming Queen Killer miniseries. Things are getting pretty messy over in Shore City. We'll be getting to that in just a moment, but first I want to say thank you all so much for your messages, for your Spotify comments, for your emails about my dog Chicano's passing. Just thank you. I really appreciate it. It's been very hard losing a beloved pet, but you all have been so sweet and so kind. And honestly, today, sitting down and reading you all a scary story brought me a lot of solace and a lot of comfort, so I hope you'll enjoy tonight's show. I think it's got all the thrills, chills, and spills you're hoping for, and a whole lot more. And I do want to mention, there's another series running here at Weekly Spooky, but of course it's only over on Patreon. In fact, this week we'll be publishing 2 installments of The Weekend. That's right, every month on Patreon, we have 2 installments of a series called The Weekend by Rob Fields. It's a Strickfield series all about a group of kids who go camping and find out that vengeance is on the menu, just like s'mores and hot dogs. If you want to check that out for as little as $1 a month and support Weekly Spooky directly, all you have to do is go to weeklyspooky.com and click on Patreon. $1 or more a month, and you get to listen to 2 bonus shows every single month that culminate a 12-part series. And when that series wraps up, we have another one ready and waiting. But now, my friends, speaking of ready and waiting, I think that's the definition of our good friend Loralee Hardy, as she continues to drop bodies all through Shore City. I am thrilled to bring you part 4 of Homecoming Queen Killer after these quick messages. Last time on Homecoming Queen Killer, Reese Claiborne continues to try and make life a living hell for Melisande LaPaula. Next, she hires 3 hoodlums to assault Melisande and Loralee Alexandra, secretly Loralee Hardy, at their new place of employment. When that fails, Reese would have to come up with another plan. At school the next day, Razor Rathman approaches Melisande to both confess his feelings for her and ask her to the homecoming dance. Loralee, who's also in love with Melisande, sees this and approaches them. Melisande is emotionally conflicted and doesn't know what to do. Reese Claiborne sees this and is determined to eliminate Melisande from both Shore City East High School and the running for Homecoming Queen. She gets Ali Prinz, her muscle girl, to beat her up. Reese wrongfully blames Melisande, and Principal Gaster suspends her without listening to her side. It is then when Deborah Lehman, Loralee's former love interest, sees she's actually back from the grave. Deborah drives out to Greenlawn Cemetery and sees evidence that Loralee Hardy is indeed back from the dead. Before she can leave to warn her friends, however, she is attacked and left for dead. And now, Homecoming Queen Killer, Part 4 by Rob Fields. Friday morning. Melisande LaPaula returned to Shore City East High School legally. Principal Theodore Gastor scowled at her as she walked by him. As always, she was clad in black, and wearing her makeup as any goth girl would. What happened? Loralee Alexandra caught up to her after she left the school the day before. Soon Arnie Razor Rathman would skip school to join them. Loralee wasn't too keen on Razor being there, but she felt he truly wanted to help Melisande. Melisande just wanted things to end, but her two love interests both talked her into going to the school board and pleading her case. They both said they would go with her. Key school board members agreed to meet with Melisande. At the end of the meeting, they told her to return to school the next morning. One of them picked up the phone and called Principal Gaster. Melisande was officially reinstated to both school and the running for homecoming queen. Members of the school board were at Shore City East High to conduct an investigation. They even pulled Reese and Ali in for questioning. But it seemed they had their stories straight. The school board could not prove that Reese had orchestrated the attack on Melisande, and both girls were allowed to remain in school. Melisande was glad to be cleared, but she was angry that Reese had gotten away with whatever she wanted. When lunch period came, both Razor and Loralee met up with Melisande. Loralee really wanted to kill Razor, but he hadn't said or done anything against her. He wasn't even trying to fight her. Melisande could clearly see the tension between the two of them. "Yeah, I know. I need to choose between you two," she said sadly. "I really can't believe this is happening to me. I'm truly sorry about being conflicted." Razor put a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Just tell me you're with Loralee here, and I promise I'll leave you alone. I had to tell you how I felt. That's all, Melisande." Melisande tightened her fists and cried a little. "And that's why I can't make a choice. I really don't want to break anybody's heart, but that's exactly what's going to happen here. Please understand." Loralee turned to Razor. "To be fair, I was the one who was seeing Melisande before you came along and poured your heart out to her." Razor addressed Loralee. "I didn't ask to feel the way I feel about her." "Stop it, both of you!" Melisande pleaded. She raised her hands in front of her. "I think there's only one way everybody wins here." She explained her idea. Loralee's eyes opened wide. "Are you serious right now?" Razor also understood as he pointed repeatedly from one girl to the other. "You mean go to homecoming together, all three of us? People are going to think we're one of those thruples or something." Melisande still looked sad. "It's just for homecoming, you guys. This is the only way I can think of to where everybody wins here." She raised her finger. "And I do not want either of you fighting over me. I mean that." Loralee and Razor both looked at each other, and then back to Melisande. Friday afternoon. Melisande and Loralee were off from Roth's Rings. When Loralee suggested they get their hair done for homecoming, Melisande was reluctant. Then she remembered she needed to have a little maintenance done and changed her mind. Loralee remembered a mall she used to love visiting during her first lifetime and suggested they get their hair done at the Great Mall of Shore City. After taking an Uber to get there, the girls walked around the grand 3-story place of commerce. Loralee immediately remembered Strickfield Town Center Mall from her days in that village. She hated that the Strickfield Mall always seemed to be on the verge of closing down when it wasn't around the holidays. But this mall was the biggest in this megalopolis. While many malls across the country had shown hard times, the Great Mall of Shore City seemed to be one of the very few that time had forgotten. Melisande couldn't believe the many people that patronized this mall. Also, there were no vacancies. If this mall ever had one, it wasn't too long before another business came in to occupy it. It was no secret that there was a waiting list for businesses wanting to establish inside this mall. Melisande wasn't as enthused about the mall as Loralee seemed to be, but she allowed that it was seemingly an escape from her mundane reality. Also, she was holding hands with Loralee as they walked around, and succumbed to its spectacle. It was when they were finally on the 3rd floor that they came to Deidre's, a salon and spa Loralee had patronized many times before. It wasn't long before the girls signed in and were waiting their turns. Loralee flirted with Melisande by gently petting her hand. Soon she snatched Loralee's hand and held it. Only a few short minutes later, Valinda Bright and Janice Ingalls walked in. Valinda quickly greeted Melisande and Loralee before she said, "Janice asked me if I knew a great place to get her hair done for tomorrow, so I suggested here. Guess you two had the same idea, huh?" Melisande smiled. "Yeah, this was Loralee's idea." Then Janice looked at Loralee and Melisande with great admiration. "Melisande, I know we're both in the running for the homecoming crown and everything." She quickly waved her hands in front of her. "But I'm not here to give you a hard time." She lowered her hands and smiled. "I am amazed that you two are both going out with Arnie Rathman now." Loralee and Melisande looked at each other. Then they turned back to Valinda and Janice. "Oh yeah, it was all over the school," Valinda told them. "You guys didn't know?" We didn't exactly go around telling everybody about it," Loralee said. "I'm sure Razor didn't say anything," Melisande said. "He's not like that." Janice gave them an apologetic look. "You three didn't have to. Some of the girls at our high school can read body language real good. They were the ones who told everybody." She waved her hand in front of them. "Again, I'm happy for you three. I really am." "We're not really a full-blown throuple," Loralee said. "No, this was just a temporary solution for homecoming," Melisande added. "At least until I can make up my damn mind." She gave an apologetic look to Loralee again. Valinda seemed to remember something and pointed at Melisande. "Hey girl, if you're not staying with me anymore, my parents kind of want you to come and get your things." "Oh, sorry Valinda," Melisande replied. "I've just been through a lot of shit these past few days." Then she quickly said to Loralee, "Not you." Loralee smiled a little. "I knew what you meant." Soon Janice was called back. Valinda explained that Janice already had an appointment booked. The stylist who came out for Janice told Loralee and Melisande they were next. When the lovers were alone again, Loralee turned to Melisande. "I can't believe the whole goddamn school thinks we're a throuple. I mean, what the fuck?" "Again, I'm sorry," Melisande said. "This is all my fault. Why did Razor have to pour his heart out to me?" She groaned and bowed her head sadly. "It really tugged at my heartstrings. Hard." "Baby, it's okay." Loralee got up. A woman came out for the two of them. When Melisande saw they weren't being seated for styling, she looked to Loralee for an explanation. "I sort of slipped a massage in," she admitted. "I hope you're not mad." Melisande uttered. "Go on back, honey," Loralee told her. "I'll be right there. I'm just going to buy a couple of tea cocktails for us to drink." Janice Ingalls was in the middle of getting her hair done. She was having it washed when she felt some wetness and suds from the shampoo get on her eyelids. It was then when the fire alarm went off. "Come on, honey, we've got to go," the stylist told Janice. On impulse, Janice opened her eyes and cried out when the suds burned on contact. "Shit!" "Oh, I'm sorry, I guess the fire alarm scared me," the stylist stammered. Then she looked over her shoulder to see people scurrying past her to get out into the main mall. As the stylist was about to quickly rinse Janice's eyes out, she felt someone grab her from behind and jam a pair of scissors right into the side of her throat. The stylist choked and gagged on both the metal and her own blood before she collapsed and died, blood all over her mouth. "What's going on?" Janice called out. Suddenly, she was grabbed by her hair and pulled back into the styling chair. "You fucking bitch! You just had to bring the throuple thing up, didn't you?" Before Janice could protest, she felt an arm going around her neck and keeping her pinned down. As Janice opened her mouth to scream, she felt something very hot and metallic suddenly getting shoved into her mouth and deep into her throat. Janice choked, gagged, and tried to scream as the hot curling iron was held deep in her throat, until she finally died from both her injuries and being unable to breathe. The police would find Janice's body with the curling iron still in her throat later, and the dead stylist on the floor beside her.
More scares to come. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
Saturday afternoon. Melisande couldn't believe it. 1, she was actually looking forward to going to homecoming. 2, she actually had 2 dates. Loralee and Razor agreed to her terms to attend this major high school dance as a throuple. Loralee kept thinking of how many ways she could kill Razor. Try as she might, she just couldn't bring herself to harm him, even if it meant having Melisande all to herself. Razor was just such a nice guy underneath that tough exterior. Then there was the fact that he protected Melisande on a few occasions. Loralee had to at least give him kudos for that. She reasoned that her calmness came from the mother part of her combined personality. Also, Loralee was curious to see how this rather unusual date would turn out. Razor picked up both girls in his convertible. From there, they trusted him to take them someplace nice for dinner. Apparently, Razor had been listening to Melisande when she talked too, because he pulled in at that run-down building that housed both a laundromat and the Golden Dragon. Wow, Melisande breathed. Twice in 1 week. Razor looked uncertain. Sorry, I didn't know you ate here already, Melisande. If you want to go somewhere else... No, this is perfect, Melisande replied. Unless you don't want to come here, Loralee. No, I love this place too. Let's eat here, she quickly agreed. They all got out of the car and went in. They were immediately seated at their table, which they saw had a reserved sign on it. You did this? Loralee asked Razor. Razor shrugged. Hey, Loralee, it's homecoming. You just know people are going to be out like we are, getting dinner before going to the dance. Why can't I fucking be mad at you? Loralee screamed in her own mind. After they ordered, the 3 of them talked about their date. When they got their food, they enjoyed it, and each other's company. Melisande found herself looking at both of her wrists again, where her dates had each claimed one to place a corsage. She was looking apologetically at them again. It's all right, Loralee told her. I still can't decide, Melisande admitted. I know you were dating me first, Loralee. I haven't forgotten that. She glanced at Razor. Then you presented me with your roses and told me how you felt. I know it wasn't easy for you to tell me. I don't want to break anyone's heart. She faced them both now. I've never had anything like this happen to me before. Please don't make me have to choose. Loralee and Razor both looked at each other. Rhys Claiborne and Ali Prinz were driving around. It wasn't long before they recognized Razor's convertible parked outside the Golden Dragon. Really? He took those 2 cunts to that fucking dump? Ali asked in surprise. Rhys glanced at her. Only looks that way on the outside. I promise you their Chinese food is second to none. Trust me on this. You know I trust you, Ali told her. You really shouldn't, you know, Rhys warned her. You know how I can be. Tell me to fuck off and die then, Ali challenged. They glanced at each other for a moment. Then Rhys shook her head slowly. Not when we've been through so much together. For Rhys, it was just as Taylor Mirren from Strickfield High had once described winning a crown. The prestige. Now that she and Ali had found Melisande, Rhys knew exactly how to keep her from making it to the homecoming dance. She was absolutely sure she would win the crown over Melisande, especially since it was just down to 2 nominees now. But she wasn't taking any chances. Rhys explained her plan to Ali once they parked behind the restaurant, and from there, they got out of the car to execute it. The throuple had finished their dinner. Melisande felt her emotions rising when her dates each took a hand and held it. She could feel herself blushing and still couldn't believe this was happening to her. Going to homecoming was one thing, but this... Melisande took her hands back and excused herself to go to the restroom. She went in and washed her hands, then checked her makeup in the mirror. She had worn her best dress, which was a black ball gown. She never told anyone, but she wore it to a wealthy relative's funeral a year ago. The dress was such a beautiful thing that she cherished it and hoped to wear it again for something special. Today, she finally got her wish. Suddenly, the restroom door burst open, revealing Ali Prinz. "You're coming with me, you little bitch. Fight me or don't. I'll beat the fuck out of you and make you come with me," she sneered. "I really hope you fight me." Melisande shook her head. "Why can't you and Reese just leave me alone? I never did a fucking thing to either one of you." Ali grabbed Melisande by her waist and yanked her out of the restroom. "You and me are gonna get real close. At least until after homecoming's over." But Ali underestimated exactly how thin Melisande was. The little goth girl squirmed enough to where she could slink down until she was out of Ali's arms. She quickly got to her feet and ran back out into the restaurant. Ali gave chase and knew she would easily catch Melisande. Then Razor saw what was happening and immediately stood up. He marched right in between Melisande and Ali. "I mean it," he told Ali. "Leave Melisande alone. Get out, now!" Ali wasted no time and punched Razor. Razor returned the favor, and the two of them were locked in a heated brawl. Restaurant staff came out and protested. Then Loralee saw Reese and decided since there was no way she could kill Razor, she would at least kill this malignancy, who kept making her presence known seemingly everywhere they went. When Reese saw Loralee, she grabbed a fork off one of the empty tables. Loralee smirked and grabbed a sharp knife off of her table. "Yeah, I really think you should die right now," Loralee told Reese. Melisande couldn't believe this was happening. On the most magical day of her life, she knew she had to put a stop to this and went outside. She quickly pulled out her smartphone and dialed the police. Suddenly, Melisande was struck on the back of her head. She dropped to the asphalt parking lot and slipped into unconsciousness as she felt her phone being taken from her. Later that afternoon, Melisande finally awakened and groaned as she stood up. She saw where she was and quickly went back inside the restaurant. Melisande put her hands to the sides of her head and uttered a blood-curdling scream. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. Bodies were lying all over the restaurant. Many of them had been cut open. Some of them had bullet holes. Insides were all over outsides. Blood was wetting the floor from wherever injuries were inflicted. Melisande heard people say many times that she was probably into horror movies, but the truth was she never liked them since they truly scared her and gave her nightmares. Now she was living in her very own horror movie. Suddenly she gasped and knew she had to find Loralee and Razor. It was then when she held herself and almost cried. However, she collected herself and focused on trying to see if any of the bodies belonged to either of her dates. She prayed like Jesus must have prayed in the Gethsemane garden that night that she would not find either of them among the dead. Then it became too much. Melisande raced outside, dropped to her knees, and threw up her dinner. "Melisande!" a voice called out. Loralee knelt down beside her. "You okay?" Melisande pointed inside. Then she saw the blood on Loralee's exposed shoulders and dress. "Yeah, I know what it must look like. You should see that rich bitch, though." Melisande quickly took Loralee's hand. "Please tell me you saw Razor." Loralee didn't want to include Razor any longer, but she understood how Melisande truly felt. Razor and the muscle bitch are still fighting it out somewhere. Melisande saw it was almost dark now. How did you get so bloody, Loralee? When it came to that rich bitch, I fucking beat her ass. She spat blood on me when I knocked one of her teeth out. She put her hands on Melisandre's shoulders. Are you okay? Melisande nodded quickly. I'm calling the police. This is all just fucking horrible. Then she remembered. Fuck, someone hit me and took my phone. And I don't own a phone, Loralee confessed. I'll go in the restaurant and call them. Just outside, Deborah Lehman also had a mission. She had been tailing Loralee Hardy since she got out of the hospital. The doctor told her to stay home so her stitches in her side could heal properly. Deborah was obsessed with learning the actual truth about how her former lover was resurrected, though she was certain she knew how. She also wondered how long it would be before Loralee would kill either Razor or Melisande. I've got to stop you, Loralee. She shook her head slowly when she saw the blood on her former lover. How many people have you killed, you monster? Deborah knew that one way or another, Loralee had to be killed for the second and final time. There was only one way to save her friends. She tightened her hands around the steering wheel. Seeing Loralee was walking away from Melisande, Deborah floored the accelerator and drove right at her prey. Melisande screamed when Deborah slammed right into Loralee with her car. When she was flat on her stomach, Deborah quickly turned the car around and floored it again, this time running over Loralee's body. Deborah stopped and quickly got out of the car. Melisande ran to her with the intention of hitting her. You fucking bitch! Why? Deborah quickly grabbed Melisande and stuffed her into her car. Then she got back behind the wheel. Melisande screamed and protested on how Deborah could just kill Loralee in cold blood. Deborah pointed ahead. Look, Melisande, look! Melisande couldn't believe that Loralee was easily lifting herself to her feet. You saw me run her over, right? Deborah asked. Tell me you saw me run her over. Yes, Melisande squeaked. Deborah floored the gas and hit Loralee again to knock her to the asphalt. She turned the car around and floored it to drive over her one more time. Melisande felt like she was going to throw up again, but managed to keep it down. Then she gasped when she saw Loralee easily getting right back up, again. What the fuck? She gasped. It had to be that spell you read at the cemetery last Saturday night, Deborah told her. You really did bring Loralee Hardy back to life. Now she won't fucking stay dead. Loralee was back to her feet and glaring at Deborah. Fuck you! You ain't never putting me back in the ground! She pointed right at Deborah now. Your ass is mine! Deborah floored the gas and hit Loralee one more time before she made it onto the road and drove away from the restaurant. Melisande couldn't believe it. I really brought the prom queen killer back? What else could it have been? Deborah confirmed, then sighed. I got a long story to tell you. Deborah told Melisande that she was romantically involved with Loralee years ago and what happened with the deaths of her brother and mother. She explained how she had broken up with her because of what her brother Aiden had done. I won't tell you about the events of the Strickfield prom last spring, Deborah finished. You can find news about that everywhere online. I just know Loralee Hardy was killed last spring. I really brought Loralee Hardy back to life? Melisande uttered in disbelief again, and her gut told her that Loralee had probably killed her parents. And now she won't die, Deborah added. Soon Deborah pulled into the parking lot of their high school. It's homecoming. We'll be safe here. When Deborah parked, they got out and went into the school at the side entrance. They didn't have much further to go to get to the gymnasium where the dance was. Suddenly, someone came up behind Deborah and held her as the knife went across her throat. "Hit and run's a very serious crime, bitch," were the last words Deborah Lehman would ever hear as her blood sprayed everywhere before she finally dropped to the floor and died. Loralee couldn't believe her eyes. "Oh my God! You killed Deborah! Why?" Well, my spookies, it looks like things are ratcheting up. I mean, who just killed Deborah? It wasn't Loralee. Could it have been our sweet Melisande? All I know, having been a resident of Strickfield for 4 years, is you never really know where the twists are coming from, so make sure you're back here next Wednesday for the final installment of Homecoming Queen Killer. This one has been pretty damn riveting, I have to admit. And I also want to mention we have a very special gift for you coming straight out of Strickfield. Well, Strickfield and beyond. Just in time for Valentine's Day. It's going to be a novella, but that's all I'm giving you for right now. You'll have to stay subscribed and stay tuned to see what's coming next. And I want to mention, my dear spookies, thank you so much for signing up over on Patreon. We have 100 paid subscribers on Patreon, and I'm so grateful because that was a goal for years, and we finally made it. And I'm so excited to publish all kinds of cool and creepy content to keep you interested. And speaking of, I want to say an extra special thank you to our Patreon podcast boosters, folks who pay just a little bit more to hear their names on the show. And they are Johnny Nix, John Callan, Bobbletopia.com, Jenny Green, Brent McCullough, Steve King, Karen Weemet, Jack Kerr, and Craig Cohen. Thank you all so much, really, from the bottom of my hearts. And if you want to hear your name on the show, all you have to do is go to weeklyspooky.com, click on Patreon, and choose any tier at $15 a month or higher, and you'll get all the bonus shows, and most importantly, my gratitude. And if you want to hang out with the Spookies completely free, just go to Facebook and type in Weekly Spookies Tomb of Terror and hang out with us and chat and post memes. It's a lot of fun. But now I gotta get back to it, my friends. See you this Monday with a new episode of Monthly Spooky. It's going to be a lot of fun. But now for myself, for my composer Ray Mattis, my producer Dan Wilder, and my executive producers Rob Fields and Mark Shields, talk at you next time.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to find your way back next week. But for now, you are safe. Trust me.